Welcome to our Friday edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, to give you a quick idea of what this call is, our Friday edition of Office Hours is our open Q&A session. So our goal is that for new Trailblazers, folks that are, learning Salesforce for the first time, studying for the certification, or experienced Trailblazers that might have an issue at work, they're stuck on some kind of challenge. This is an open forum that you could bring your questions, and hopefully either I will be able to answer them or somebody else on the call with more experience will be able to answer them. And again, anything Salesforce technology related is fair game. Yeah, so you can ask any question. The only thing that I ask you to do is if you have a question, just use the gesture in Zoom here to raise your hand. That way we kind of have a queue in order that we'll call on people to get their questions answered. In addition to our Friday edition of Office Hours, which was the original that started a couple of years ago, we have a few other sessions available as well throughout the week. A couple of you mentioned that you're joining the Wednesday session with David. Awesome sessions. If you're not already joining those, make sure you do that. We have a Monday session called Off the Record Chatter that happens every other Monday. And then we also have our Tuesday, Trailhead Tuesday sessions with Jade. In a couple of weeks, we're also going to be kicking off a Thursday session, which is going to be developer focused as well. So more details. Once we have those details, we'll definitely share it with the community. What I will do once we kick it over to our speaker, I'll also put a link to our Slack workspace in the chat. If you're not already connected on our Slack workspace, definitely do that. The recordings, notes from our call, updates, all that kind of stuff. We post in that Slack workspace for the various channels that we have here for the different sessions. And of course, if you have questions that we don't get to during the call, you can feel free to post them there and we'll try to answer them via Slack as well. All right. Now for our session for today, we actually have a guest that's going to be walking us through a tool. We always like to, one of the things that we like to do for our Friday office hours is not only answer questions, but for new admins, new developers, walk you through some of the tools that you might be able to put in your toolbox as you're starting your career as an admin. So one of those tools that we're going to walk through today is the Flow Toolkit. And here to kind of speak about that is the builder of that application, the founder. Bobby, I'll leave it up to you to introduce yourself. But Bobby Wright is here and Mary Crozier, and I think they have a few other folks in their team that are going to walk us through the Flow Toolkit, what it is, how it works, and give us a live demo. So with that, I will stop sharing. And Bobby, if it's okay, I'll turn it over to you.
For sure. And yeah, I'm just going to intro myself to a very brief intro to the Flow Toolkit, and then Mary and the Client Cloud Care team are going to demo some solutions that they've been working on. I'm turning my videos since I'm here when I'm talking right now. So yeah, I am a Salesforce developer and an architect, and I will say I probably started in the same place a lot of you all are. I mostly work with nonprofits. I've always worked in the nonprofit space, and my tiny nonprofit that I worked at for about 10 years, we got Salesforce. And one of the things that Salesforce does is it makes itself available to nonprofits. And so it's a really good market to get into. I think there's about 25,000 nonprofit organizations that use Salesforce. And there's a lot of need in that space because a lot of times these nonprofits don't have a really large tech team on staff. And so they rely on lots of consultants and skill sets outside of the organization. But I was available at the time to help make our Salesforce work for us as our nonprofit. And I got into learning how to do all the simple config, creating objects, doing all that stuff, but eventually ran into roadblocks with, Salesforce is not meeting our needs. And so I learned to code, I learned how to become a developer, and over the years just got really more and more into Salesforce, which kind of brings me back full circle to where we are now with the Flow Toolkit. I developed the Flow Toolkit as a way for admins that don't have the technical skill set to code to be able to do more customizable developer type solutions using the power of Salesforce Flow. Flow is now the go-to solution for any of our automations. But you can also build custom interfaces, custom forms, custom what we used to call like wizards, walking people through a process of, okay, first do this, then we're going to take another screen and do this, this, and this. So you can really solidify what that business process is for your users, to ensure correct data gets into your system. And so, but one of the things that or some of the things that are missing in Salesforce Flow is just a lot of the good user experience components that we're used to seeing in other third-party form builder tools. And so at its core, the Flow Toolkit is a way to make Flow easier to approach for entry-level admins or even developers that want to produce solutions quicker. So that is the basic intro. I did share some links that you all can look at. You can get to the site to see some of our demos. You can go onto the App Exchange to find our app, but I'm going to let Mary and the team show what's possible to build with the Flow Toolkit, and then I will be around to answer any other questions after that presentation.
So with that, I think I'll take over. So Mary Crozier, super excited to be here. Let me share my screen just a second. Okay. Okay, should be sharing. So thanks so much for inviting us here today, Bill and Bobby. Really, it should be Lindsay's picture up there because she's going to be doing the hard work of doing the live demo. I was like, I'll help you with the slides and set you up for success, but it's all on you. So definitely she gets the props here. But it's great to be here and share what we're working on. We're really excited. A little side story, met Bobby actually at Dreamforce last year, actually at the sprint at Dreamforce last year. So if you're wondering, should I go to Dreamforce? Is it worth it if you're new? Should I participate in these sprints? It's, my time, I get nothing out of it other than goodwill. I think the answer is obviously yes. It's what you make of it. Get out there, talk to people, listen to what they're doing. It pays off dividends for what you're working on, who you're working with. So a little bit about me and Cloud Care. I'm a military spouse, retired now, and I'm the founder and CEO of a Salesforce consulting firm called Client Cloud Care that specializes in leveraging the talents of military spouses and veterans to provide amazing outcomes for clients. And our specific focus is in the nonprofit sector. So with that, I would like to let's see if I can get my slides to move forward. There we go. So with that, I want to introduce Lindsay, who is a Cloud Care Salesforce consultant. As you can see here, she's a military spouse. She's living in Hawaii, so she is up early, people. Be patient with her. I know she's going to rock it, though. And she's enjoying all that a remote flexible schedule offers from Hawaii. She's 4 times certified and applicable to today's conversation. She's recently been certified with the major forms platforms. So she does know what she's talking about. And with that, I'll let her take over and talk about the project she's currently working on using the Flow Toolkit.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Bobby and Bill, for having me today. So we started with a client that decided to move off of one of the major form platforms and wants to move over to the Flow Toolkit, which was very exciting because I had never used it before. And so I've been learning kind of alongside this build. And this has just been kind of an eye-opening and mind-blowing experience for me, knowing what I do know about the forms platforms that I'm certified in, and then going to this, that I have so much more capabilities and so many more options in providing the solution for our client. I'm really excited. We are about maybe 3/4 of the way done with the project. So we are still building and bringing solutions for them. But the great things about this is it's completely inside Salesforce. It's completely native to Salesforce. And then you're using all of the power of Flow to bring information that you already have within Salesforce to your forms, and then process any records that you either want to create or update or whatever you can do with flow, you can do with this, which is amazing. Kind of like this slide says. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as I get going here and show you what we've started to create for our client.
So Lindsay, real quick, let me just ask you, what time is it in Hawaii right now?
It is 6:15.
I really appreciate you joining us and walking us through this, especially since I didn't put your picture on the title slide. So my apologies for that. We'll
No
make it up
worries.
to you in one way or another. We'll figure it out.
All right. Just gonna go ahead and share the whole desktop here.
One of the baskets, Bill. That's what you need to send.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, I think that's a great option.
All right. So within our Flow Toolkit sandbox here, I just wanted to show you real quick the way that you build a form. So on the right-hand side, there's this great preview area that you can see exactly what you're doing at all times. There's these tabs over here that walk you through everything that you need to build the form. So this is the general tab. There's the form section tab. So each of these blue areas is a section. You can see that you title them and it's very easy to navigate through and know exactly what you're doing. There's drop-down boxes that make it really easy. And all of the fields that are available in Salesforce, you can access and put in these sections. So this is great. Some other things that I really like about this tool, the section display system. If one of these will. Styling, here we go. So you can control how wide you want your fields. You can do that for an entire section. You can do that for just one field. It's really nice to be able to set things. And you'll see on one of my next screens that you can set things up next to each other. It doesn't have to look stacked. It's so customizable as far as what you want the form to look like. Default, this all is gray with the templates that Bobby provides. I made these blue to make it on brand with our client. Go back here. In some of these fields, so that's all about the section. Here's some of the fields. If you expand, this just gives you information about the fields. This is the second one here. You can see I can just shorten that one. There's display types in the pick list. I love this radio button, so it probably won't look real pretty, but you'll see it on another area. But instead of putting, radio pick lists like we're used to seeing on a lot of things, the radio buttons is just a really nice touch, I think. So one of my favorite features as far as display goes. So it's really easy to sit and build your forms here. With that, the next step once you get your forms built is creating the flow. So really fun to go in here. Again, Bobby creates the templates and provides those with the package. It has templates for grabbing URL parameters. So if you're not familiar, what that does is that it creates a parameter value and attaches it to the back end of if you create a parameter and put it on the back end of your URL, creating a custom URL, based on your contact ID or something else that would relate to a record within Salesforce, you can use that within your flow and pull it all into information that you're going to use within that flow. So you can see on this one, there's the URL parameters. These are all templates that he also provides to create the buttons and everything on the bottom of the screen that I'll show you in just a moment. And then as I build out my flow, you can see that I'm grabbing information here as well. So this screen, open this one up. here's the form that I'm going to show you in just a moment. It's a component within the flow screen. And it's very easy to use. This is just the API name of my flow, of my form that I built. And then you select your object and the form that you'd like to attach. You can select options for prefill. This one does not currently, but it goes in there. And then I can do things like get the contact. I can put a decision point. Does it already exist? Yeah. Well, then just go to my next screen. No, create the record before you go to the next screen. So there's all of the things that you can do within Flow, you can do with this toolkit, which is awesome. If anybody else has used other form platforms, form solutions, you know that some of these things that I'm talking about are difficult to navigate sometimes, interesting to work with, and sometimes just don't do what you expect them to do at the time you expect them to. And so it's really great to be able to control all of that within the flow. And then we've got the ability, I just wanted to show you here also, to put in screens that don't necessarily have a form. This one doesn't have one. This is just display text as a confirmation screen saying, are you sure you want to submit this? So again, very powerful. You can display whatever you want, images, forms. And then I have an action here that once everything is submitted, it'll send you to a URL so that you don't just go back to the same screen start. Because if you've ever built a screen flow, you know that where it navigates you to after you're done with that screen flow, it takes you back to the start screen, starts over. So this one actually sends you out to a URL. So once you've built the flow, then you have to decide where you're going to put it. Screen flows work within Salesforce. So you can put this within your Salesforce org for your users to be able to use. You can also externally show this to visitors, as my client has requested, on an Experience Cloud site. So we were able to build out an Experience Cloud site and drop our form in here. So we've just put in a quick header, added a couple columns on the sides to make it look nice, and then put in the information. This is a scholarship application that our client is using. So it's got a lot of information. It collects a lot of information. It's going to go through several different screens. I don't know if it'll do it here. It won't. Once you get it all built out and published, here is the URL. I've got boxes in the way, so I can't get to it. But those URL parameters, which is going to go on this right-hand side, it might pre-fill things, which is a really great feature for this product as well. It is 6 o'clock in the morning, and so I did not have a lot of time to troubleshoot this morning. It was working last night, and I have to be honest, it is not working this morning. So once I go through this, it's going to give me an error. So I have to troubleshoot that. Unfortunately, I can't show you all the way through this form, but as you can see, once I clear that insufficient privileges error, it would go through 3 different screens. It would create a contact, and then it would, once you submitted, it would kick you out to our Client Cloud Care homepage. Does anybody have any questions?
I think we have a few questions that have come in that were sent to me, and I have a few others that I wrote down as well. Before I go through my list, though, anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Okay, so I see a hand up. good. Farah?
Yeah, so this is super helpful. I didn't even know this was going to be this helpful, but currently the company that I work for, we have a credit application. So my company just got Salesforce, so we recently implemented a new org. It's only like 2-3 months old. So we're right now in the middle of trying to convince a lot of users, hey, Salesforce is better. Salesforce can do this much better, kind of. And we have a credit application that users fill out on their website. It isn't an experience, it isn't like, you know, a Salesforce product, it's just their own website. And is there a way to like have this form displayed on like the existing website, or do we need to sell them on to Experience Cloud as well first?
Yeah, so I have not hung it on, but Bobby, I'll let you go ahead.
Sure.
And
Yeah, can I take over screen sharing too, as I'm going back and forth between this? So let's see here. So for sure, there is what's called inside. This is a Salesforce technology, but we have this built into the app just to make this easy. There is a solution called Lightning Out. And if you install this, we give you this nice little Lightning Out JavaScript wizard here. And so you can just paste in the name of your domain. This is a Salesforce site or an Experience Cloud site. You don't have to actually configure something on here, but basically what this does is this creates a guest user, and that guest user is what allows you to have permissions to read records, to create records inside of your Salesforce system. So that's why this custom domain is needed. That's from your Salesforce site or Experience Cloud site. And then you can just pop in the name of your flow. You paste this into your website. This is going to run the JavaScript to call out into Salesforce to grab that flow, and then you inject it anywhere onto your external website. So there's a couple other things that you need to do as far as setting your course policy, but for sure it is possible. It just kind of depends on what your client is needing. A lot of nonprofits that we're working with, we're, at least for me, like I try to drive them down the direction of building out program portals where you can put more information around this. You can link them to documents or other related stuff instead of just having a flat form on a page, but that's for sure possible.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other questions? Jonathan, go ahead. Saw your hand up.
Sure. So I guess this is more for Bobby. You know, it looks like you originally focused mostly on flow, but you're demoing and showing a lot of stuff on Experience Cloud. Do you think you're going to build any kind of utility that makes it easier to create, set up, and build out Experience Cloud sites?
I mean, at least for me, I mean, I mean, maybe I'll add some components. I mean, I will say that I think there's a lot of good stuff in the new Lightning Web Runtime Experience Cloud site as far as giving you more capacity to make a really nice modern website. That does, at least currently, it requires you to have at least one Experience Cloud license. But we're primarily focused on this portion of an Experience Cloud site. Of you want to quickly be able to throw up some forms onto your site. You don't want, like, if you don't have I mean, you can make very basic flows that you can put up onto an Experience Cloud site to create records in your system or update records. But without a developer, it's hard to achieve things like this for your Experience Cloud. So yeah, this is our primary focus for this. We have other resources in the toolkit, but yeah, it's primarily a form builder, both for internal forms and external facing forms.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
One question was building forms. Will this work on all standard objects, custom objects? Is there any limitations there that folks should be aware of?
Yeah. So it's kind of, we'll get into some pricing thing.
That was going to be my second question, actually.
Yeah. So I come out of the nonprofit space, and so it was really important for me to make sure that this was available fairly affordable for nonprofits, but out of the box, anybody can use the Flow Toolkit for free. It will limit you to creating form components on the account, contact, case, and lead object. And so a lot of times, if you're building Experience Cloud solutions, you can do a lot with the case and lead objects. But if you want to start building solutions on custom objects or other standard objects, you'd have to pay for one of the licenses. Small nonprofits that are using just their 10 free licenses from Salesforce, if they're not paying for licenses, they can buy the unlimited version, which is what's called our grassroots license, for $30 per month. All other orgs, whether they're for profit or just larger nonprofits, the whole app, the unlimited version, is $150 per month, and those are open to all objects. There are a handful of objects that don't work. I believe, like the event object, like some of those strange objects that they actually don't work hardly anywhere inside Salesforce as far as doing dynamic fields. We don't have access to, but pretty much any custom object, most standard objects, you're going to have access to build components for.
Gotcha. What is the what's the main differentiator between that $30 and the $150 price point?
This one is the really the same exact package. There's really no difference between the packages except for the free version. There's just on the free version, there's a limit to what objects you can use. These are the same. This is 100% designed for if a nonprofit comes to us and says, "Hey, we're a small nonprofit." Gotcha. Nonprofits, if you're not familiar with this, Salesforce grants nonprofits 10 free enterprise licenses. And so those types of nonprofits that aren't paying for Salesforce, they're just using the 10 free licenses to do their work. That's what this license is designed for, just to keep this cheap and affordable for them to do their mission within the Salesforce platform.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. In the flow, Lindsay, that you walked through, you had one flow element in there that was called nav to homepage. Is that part of this application, or is that just something separate that you're using just to at the end of the flow direct you somewhere else?
That's an action that is part of the Flow Toolkit. As Bobby's showing here, I just added the action to the end of the flow so that when it finished, when I hit the submit button, it does navigate out to a URL. And so it doesn't keep you within, because basically with the screen flows, after you submit, it'll take you back to the beginning of that flow, which you want your users or your visitors to know that, yes, this was submitted, and reduce the risk of them submitting it again.
So a good use case here, if you have a screen flow sitting on like your home tab or something that's creating an opportunity record or a case record, that final step can navigate you to the case that you just created. That in and of itself, I think is worth installing this application. That's pretty slick.
For sure. And that's a good thing even to know about, like the pricing. Like, just if you just want to use like some of the components, like the flow components all come within the free version. So and another thing I'd highlight is like that piece, this was just talked about there. If you use a flow, a lot of times I will use the same flows that I'm exposing to like my external constituents. I'll use those same flows for my internal users. And then what you can do inside of flow is you can use a decision to determine like, oh, is this an internal user, or is this my guest user on my site? And depending on what that decision is, I might navigate to an external web page that has like, oh, we received your form, thank you, we want to send it back to our website. But if it's an internal user using the flow, I might want to navigate to the page. And that just allows you to, at least from my position, like reducing technical debt, where I have two different types of solutions for people. I'm really just adding some business process into my flow and doing different things. So these are the different navigation actions. You can navigate to an Experience Cloud site, you can navigate to a record page, and that's where you would just drop in the name of the object and the newly created ID for that record that you created, or just any external website is what this navigation action is.
Awesome. I did notice something as I was browsing your website called Table Builder. Could you potentially speak to that a little bit, what that is?
Sure. Let me pop into, do I have this open over here? Yeah. So there is one, I mean, let me pop in here. Like one of the concepts here, if anybody's familiar with field sets, these form components that you're building inside of the form builder, you can build whole entire forms. The way I have people think about this, or I try to have people think about this, they're closer to field sets. You're building reusable components that you can use throughout flow. So one of the things, if you build like this account component, which is basic account information, you can drop the same component into 5, 10 different flows. Then if you make a change as far as adding a new field, all of your flows get updated. There's no need to get in there and to move new fields into map fields to that other flows. Our table builder, there's now a standard table, data table inside of Flow, which works really good if you just want to display records. But if you're building tables with our table builders, it works hand in hand with our form components. And so what that allows you to do is you can build your table, you can move around your columns, add labels, and it has the same setup as you're working with the form builder. You move over fields, you can rearrange columns just by moving these around in here. You can rename them. You can do a lot of different functional things like adding icons in here. But one of the great things is you can also customize the process for editing records or adding new records. And so what I'm doing here, if you scroll down to this bottom, you can see table record edit form. What we're doing is you can inject form components to allow you to add new records and to edit records. And so if I click on this edit here, you can see there is my my form component. And so this functions like a custom quick action for this flow, or it's equivalent to a page layout that you're customizing for the solution. If I then change this name, testing, that comes back into my table. The tables inside of Flow, though, this doesn't actually update the record. This component's going to pass back those collections of records to update, records to insert, records to delete. If you give people the ability to remove those, you just have this complete ability to change the user experience, what this table looks like, but you also have the power of Flow that allows you just to do different things with these records. A lot of times what I tell people for things like deleting, it's not a normal thing that I allow my users to delete records, but I might want to give them the user experience that feels like they're deleting records. And so when these records come back that are marked to be deleted, I might change like the status or like check a checkbox, like removing them from the view from those users. And so that's all available within the table builder. And then, like I said, the primary thing is you can switch out these. And so if I switch out this volunteer group and now click on this again, you can see that's a whole different component that I'm passing in there to allow people to create or edit records within that table for a specific flow.
Wow. How does Table Builder fit into the previous pricing model that you had walked through?
It's all together. Everything is all in one package. So you can build tables. Let me go back to, you can see here, these are forms. This is the repeater. The repeater allows you to pass in one of those form components and to create as many of those records within the same screen without having to loop through screens. That's a really popular feature. The tables are also a part of the package for building out tables. One of the things that you have available with tables is you can instantly inside of, if you have an object structure that has a lookup to itself, you can turn your tables into a hierarchy tree. And so you can have we have this out of Salesforce for things like accounts, contacts, campaigns, and cases. But if you have a custom object or another standard object that you want to have more of a hierarchy structure, you can use Flow and our table builder to easily build one of these hierarchy structures to display that data to your users and let them interact with it.
That's pretty awesome. That is light years beyond what you can do with that standard data table component today. All right. Let's see. Any other questions from anybody on the call? Going once, going twice. Lindsay, Bobby, anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, like I said, I would just drop it into a dev org. I mean, it's for sure. If you're not already learning Flow, highly recommend learning Flow. I'm pretty deep into Flow, and so I think it comes pretty easy to learn, and once you get into to build in the components. But if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, either support here. I'm also fairly active on LinkedIn, and so if you just want to hop on a call someday just to learn how to implement this for any orgs that you're working with, just reach out and I'll try to help you out.
Awesome. I see a hand up. Ben, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. This is a great demo, by the way. Awesome tool. I was curious what the deployment process looked like. Almost like there were some Lightning Web components in there.
Sure.
If I were to move this between orgs, or as a consultant, if I wanted to, build out a design and then pick it up and drop it into another org, as a starting, what would that look like?
Yeah. So there's no Lightning Web components. I mean, we are building Lightning Web components, but the structure is all in custom metadata. And so if you were going to be deploying from sandbox to sandbox, if you've ever used declarative lookup rollup summary, it's the same process. You're going to go and grab the custom metadata types and you're going to move them from sandbox to sandbox. What's nice about that then is also when you spin up new sandboxes, all of your form components are going to be working as expected from production. So it just goes with your org. So, but it's also like you said, if you want to build a solution in a dev org and you want to package it up, it's also easy to package this and to share this with other orgs.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Rob, I see you have a hand up.
Mine is not necessarily related to this wonderful demonstration we've just had, so I'm willing to hold it until the discussion concludes.
Right. Well, in that, I'll ask you to hold it for 1 second. So any other questions on Flow Toolkit before we just open it up for broader Q&A? All right. So, Bobby, if you don't mind, I'm going to take over sharing once more. Okay. And before we move on to questions, I just want to take an opportunity to thank Bobby, Mary, Lindsay, everybody that joined the call, especially Lindsay, since we didn't give you credit on LinkedIn and everything else. I didn't put your picture there, and you're joining from Hawaii. Thank you so much for getting up early, making the time, and walking us through a demo. Really do appreciate that. I'll reach out to you offline, and if you have an address, I will try to send you a basket, as Sandy mentioned, a fruit basket. So,
well, thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Awesome. All right, so let's once again thank Bobby and team for joining. But let's open up for questions. Rob, we'll start with you. Yeah, what do you got?
Excellent. Yeah. So several of us on this call are first timers. And I'm literally just now finding out about some of these resources. So I'd like to hear from somebody who's, maybe a month or two in, what's the learning curve like, and how's the experience? I'm a veteran. I'm coming after my retirement. I worked for Amazon for a while. And I'm very interested in Salesforce as an organization and a capability. So with that background, I just kind of want to know what's my next 2 months look like, learning curve wise.
Anybody have any thoughts there? So while people are gathering their thoughts, I'll give you my take on this. One thing I would say is, and I've mentioned this a few times on previous calls, but I feel like if you go back maybe 10 years, there was a point within Salesforce where you could learn Salesforce, right? It was you could know everything there was to know about Salesforce. But since then, it's gotten so big. There's so many different clouds: Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Pardot, Service Cloud, Sales Cloud. There's just so much going on. So to know it all anymore, it's a very difficult thing. So as you're starting on your learning journey and starting to learn Salesforce, it's very easy to get overwhelmed just on the volume of stuff that can come your way. So for me, for somebody that was just starting out, I would kind of tend to focus on one portion of the platform that you have an interest in. A lot of folks tend to go towards Sales Cloud. That's kind of the bread and butter, functionality of Salesforce, where they kind of got their start. So Sales Cloud and platform, that's like, creating your objects and your fields and starting to learn about the layouts and some of the automation, things like that. So that's where I would tend to focus, is just on the core functionality of Salesforce. And then as you start building your skill set, you can branch out into any direction that you think is interesting, AI, Einstein Analytics, or Tableau CRM, whatever they're calling it these days. But yeah, start simple and just kind of build as you, start to, develop an interest in something else. So that being said, anybody else have any thoughts on those first 2 months getting started on the platform?
Oh, hello.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, so yeah, what I would say is don't restrict yourself on a timeline. You got to do it on your own organically, like however long it takes for you to make it click. Like, for example, I just learned what Salesforce was back in November, and then so it took me from then to now to get certified. And but I think that's I don't think that was too slow or too fast. Everybody's different, but I think yeah, like you said, Bill, it's overwhelming, the whole, like, the amount of different paths that you can take, and like just all the information. Like if you follow your LinkedIn feed, you're just going to be like all over the place trying all these different different clouds and Einstein, this and that. And so what I would say is just like pick a lane, like Bill said, and then just kind of try to tune out some of the other information, because there's a lot of noise out there from what I can see, from somebody who just, I'm not working in Salesforce yet. I'm just looking for a job and trying to build the skills I need. But just try to tune out some of the noise that's out there. That's what I would say.
All right. Any other thoughts on this? Rob, if you haven't done so already, definitely check out veterans.force.com. That's like the main Salesforce military site. So if you're coming from the veteran space, get logged in there. They have goals that you set. They have kind of a curated knowledge path that you follow. As you go through that, that'll unlock you getting your free training courses, the free certifications, all that kind of stuff. So if you're not already signed up on that main website, definitely do that. All right. Cool. Well, I hope that's helpful. Sandy, I see a hand up from your side. What do you got?
Always got something, right? For the approval process, how do you restrict someone with a sysadmin profile from being able to approve something if they're not the assigned approver?
Okay, so you want to make it so that as somebody submits something for approval, you want to make sure that some random admin who has nothing to do with that record, not part of the management structure, whatever it is, they don't go in there and just click on approve just because, they feel like it. I'm curious, in the approval process, when you build that, you do have the ability to put in like criteria, but I guess you would need to basically throw an error if it's not like an approved approver. Anybody have any thoughts here? Anybody super familiar with the approval process that might have a thought here?
No, I don't have a thought, but I wonder if you could just check in a validation rule against that user being a system admin.
I tried, but it either was, then it kind of had other issues with it. So it was like, trying to figure out like the specific criteria that only like the specific approver should be. Like I tried doing, like I even created like a field where it put in the Salesforce ID of whoever the approver is. And but then it was like, I couldn't either figure out the correct things that would prevent it from being updated, because then it was like preventing it from being updated anytime, or then it was updated, so I just got to the point where I'm just like, it doesn't matter, because this org is new, and in the long run, it might not even really be a thing, but it was more the fact that while they're testing this thing that we just sent out, one of the people testing has sysadmin, but he wasn't an approver, and he's able to click it. And so I was just like, well, how are you supposed to test it doesn't work if you can actually do things that you shouldn't be able to do?
Yeah. Let me just very quickly, I'm going to share my screen real quick. I don't think, Sandy, unfortunately, I don't think that we're going to have time to go through and build this out and actually test this one. But just for those on the call that might not be aware of this, if you're in your Salesforce org and you go to setup, and on the left side over here in the quick find, if you type in approval, so if I type in approve, you will get this option here for approval processes under the process automation section. So if I click on that, it'll bring you to a screen that I think was designed in 1992. And from here, you can select which object you want to build an approval process for. So for example, if I went into an account, we can do that. And you'll see the button here for create new approval process. In my career, I've been working in Salesforce since I think like 2005 or 6 or something like that. I think I might have created half a dozen approval processes, and I never remember which one is which here for which option you should select for like the wizard or the standard thing, jumpstart or standard setup. So I just randomly pick one, and then you can always go back and edit it later. But this will actually walk you through, give it a name, some name. You go to next, and it'll start asking you like, who do you want? What is the entry criteria of the records? So not equal to blank. Let's just keep going through here. It'll ask you who's the next approver determined by. So you might say like, it's going to be whoever the standard, like the user's manager. And then keep going here. And then it'll ask you for like the email template that you want to use for when somebody like to send out the approval request once it gets submitted. So anyway, it'll walk you through the process, but eventually this will get you to the point where from a record in Salesforce, it'll give you the ability to submit it for approval. It'll route it to whoever's supposed to be doing the approvals. They can review it. They can either approve it, reject it. You can recall the approval. So there's a lot going on there. Like I said, we can definitely dig into this on another call when we have a little bit more time and actually build out an approval process. But if you're not familiar with that functionality, that's in there for pretty much any standard or custom object. You can build that kind of approval workflow. But Sandy, I think that one I'll take offline. And if I come up with anything that would prevent standard admins from approving, if they're not the actual approver, I will definitely let you know.
How about adding if you update a pick list on a standard field, is there any way to get that in a change set, or do you have to just do it manually?
Okay, this is a follow-up question, nothing to do with the approval process.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
It's because of the same stuff, but yes.
Okay. All right. So to say your question back to you, this is, you have a pick list field, a standard pick list field, for example, like a stage on opportunity, something like that.
Yep.
And you are trying to add values to that. And then you want to be able to deploy those values from one environment to another.
Yep.
Short answer is I have absolutely no idea, but that's also something that we can take a quick look at. So actually, I don't think that we can take a quick look at this because
No, it's not going to be quick.
sets.
I was just hoping if you knew offhand.
No.
But otherwise, I don't think it's quick.
Can I say something right here? Sorry, I'm gonna jump in here. Like one of the things that I see, and I also rarely like implement approval processes, but one thing that I'm seeing more and more of is if you can create a custom system admin profile. If you're using the standard admin profile, you're not gonna be able to get around that. But you can create a custom system admin profile and remove the modify all data, and just give them access to create objects, do all the other changes they can do to get around it. So I pasted in the help documentation on why they get that approval. And if you could just remove that permission and give them a custom admin profile, that's an option.
Yeah, great suggestion. Yeah, so for going back to the pick list one for now, packaging up new pick list values for standard fields is definitely not something I know off the top of my head. But I'm assuming that you ran into this where it's like an issue where you can't do it.
So just knowing from past experience about other stuff, because I've got all the other stuff I built around some of this, I know I won't be able to deploy my change set unless that is updated as well. So if I have to go in and manually do it ahead of time, I just need to make sure I make a note of it. But because my flow is based on some of the, the new values in the standard field and stuff like that, I need to make sure it exists. But I did actually find this about the whole the pick list thing but I don't use the whole GitHub thing. I haven't really looked into it to learn about it, but apparently Salesforce has made a way to do it. But since I wasn't running it or anything like that before I built all this stuff, I can't use it anyway. So
yeah,
but it's cool for somebody else.
Yeah, I think setting GitHub aside, I was going to say that probably the way that you could do it is through deploying it through like the metadata API. Like if I had VS Code and I downloaded the changes from Sandbox, I can easily then point to production and deploy it. I'm assuming if they did something through GitHub through some kind of like continuous integration, continuous development type process, whatever layer they put on top of it to make it pretty, they're still probably using that same process that you would do manually through like VS Code through the metadata API. So yeah, definitely another one that I'll have to take a look at. I think that would be 3 baskets that I owe after this call then for 2 questions I couldn't answer of yours. So, all right. So in the last 4 minutes, any other questions or topics that anybody would like to go through for today? Quick topics, ideally. Any other long topics that we can at least start and then cover on our call next week? All right, hearing none. So that being said, again, I just want to thank Bobby, Mary, Lindsay, everybody else, for joining the call and walking us through the demo Flow Toolkit. Definitely something I'm going to check out and see if I can get set up within our Salesforce org. Just to kind of start kicking the tires and just see where we might, start using it for our clients. So what I'll do is for the chat here, there's a lot of links that folks have been posting, including the link for the App Exchange listing for the Flow Toolkit. So I'll try to make sure that I get that into our Slack workspace. So a bunch of like references that we discussed during the call. I'll also be putting the recording of the call within the Slack workspace, and we'll throw it up on LinkedIn as well. So if anybody has any questions, the best place to reach out is through that Slack workspace. And if I don't talk to you, I hope everybody has a nice long weekend if you're celebrating the holiday here in the US next week. And we'll look to connect next week. So thanks all. Appreciate it.